Namaste and welcome to another episode of Amazing Vedas with Dr. Pariksith Singh. Dr. Singh, good news and bad news. The good news is people are starting finally to take some cognizance of the kind of discussions we are having or the kind of sometimes provocative claims we are making. And some very serious people have started engaging with us. You've seen that in a platform such as Twitter. But I want to share with you a response or a reaction from a very serious sadhak, I will not name him, who studied Sri Aurobindo in great depth and detail, Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And let me first just read out the response or the reaction, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. I want to give a little bit of context also. But with your permission, I'll just read that response out. And in fact, he has responded to your article in First Post, where you talk about how the Vedic vision holds the key to the future, you see. So, you remember, viewers, we have been talking about Vedas, Sri Aurobindo, India's independence, and the future of humanity. We're trying to link up all of these. And we find, as I said, interesting responses. Anyhow, let me read this out. So this person says, in my humble opinion, Sri Aurobindo's supramental vision of the future should not be limited by Vedic vision. The mother and Sri Aurobindo have gone far, far ahead. One has to read the mother's agenda to realize how far ahead they have gone. So I just want to, before I invite your response, I just wanted to mention a couple of very interesting, observations that I have made or I have discovered, trends. So, when you start talking about the Veda, there's a whole bunch of people who oppose it. And they are the expected opposers of the Vedas, I don't want to disparage them by calling them the Valas and the Panis and the Vritras, but you know who I'm talking about, our great lefties, so whoever, I mean the libbies, the lefties, let's not, we are very polite here. Whoever they are, they have their usual reasons. And then, interestingly, this is the point that, in other words, we are getting a certain degree of pushback or flack from the expected quarters. But what I find so fascinating, and by the way, another area that we've already covered is how, the Western, should I say, the scholars and the translators of the Veda have also ignored Sri Aurobindo. So again, there's a pushback there. If not pushback, cancel culture, call it what you will. But, our approach is also facing some kind of resistance, I'll call it, from the Aurobindonians themselves. And this is so startling to me, And in my view, again, in my humble opinion, as they say, and correct me if I'm in the wrong direction, I think that it comes from a confusion about what the Veda means. And we've already clarified that the Veda is a living stream of wisdom, of perpetual wisdom, I call it, or perpetual gnosis, or call it the light, or the whatever you might want to call it, which is not static. Otherwise, you couldn't call it the Shruti. Shruti means that which is perennial. It cannot be something that was written some 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 5,000, and then it's all encoded and preserved, and it's all boxed up. It's in some nice, compartment which you locked up, and that would make it the Smriti, unfortunately, right? And they're doing the same with Sri Aurobindo and the mother. The agenda is a living Veda. It is the same perennial stream of wisdom which is manifesting itself again and again. Like I mentioned in the last episode, how is it that Tyagaraja was able to, actually connect with the Vedic idea of Swara and the Sama Veda? I mean, again and again and again, we see through substitution, through recurrence. You said Anuvada, you said Anumati. These are beautiful words because somehow we regain or we re-establish our links with the Veda, because the Veda is not external. That's what we've been saying. It is inside us as well. Anyhow, I've spoken too much. I would please request you to comment on this post. If you like, I'll read it one more time just to refresh our memory, viewers. So the gentleman says, and I respect him deeply, I know him personally. He says, in my humble opinion, Sri Aurobindo's supramental vision of the future should not be limited by Vedic vision. The mother and Sri Aurobindo have gone far, far ahead. One has to read the mother's agenda to realize how far ahead they have gone. Over to you, Dr. Singh.
I was going to respond to it, but I did not, because now you've taught me how not to respond on social media or these, because see, there are in India there is traditionally three ways of approaching a discussion. One was called Vada. Vada was a creative, constructive discussion where you would bring your experience, not your ideas, your experience, the other his realization, and you would see, and often you would pay attention to each other's experience and realization. There would be a coming together, so the great debates, shastrarth, between your Shankara and Mandana Mishra were not intellectual debates. They were a sharing of a deep experience. This is my realization, this is your realization. And that is why when he has not experienced something, when his wife says, do you talk about the Grihastha ashram, he goes and experiences it and then comes back. Look at the integrity, look at the purity of these people. Because of them, we have reached a point where our spiritual maturity is we are able to say, Mandana Mishra was able to say, you are right, your vision is bigger. And he gave up all his accomplishments and became a student of Adi Shankara. So that is Vada. Then there are two others. One is the third one, which is what we hear on often nowadays on TV, where people don't listen to each other, they fight, it is not even coherent. So I presume this is a Vada, this is the Shastrartha. So let me say a few things. There's no disagreement that the mother and Sri Aurobindo have been great yogis. How can I say anything? They're my teachers. So, and I'm talking about Sri Aurobindo in that article. And I don't think I tried to limit Sri Aurobindo just with the Vedic vision. But we must remember, Sri Aurobindo brought back the Veda to us. Okay, you can say, people say, oh, that was in the 1914 and all that. He grew up far beyond that. Okay, well, he also said that the Veda was our past and the Veda may well be our future. The vision of the Veda is untrammeled, it is pure. And what is the vision about? To move from darkness to light. Have we transcended that? To move from death to immortality. Have we transcended that? To move from ignorance to knowledge. Have we transcended that? No. We are still, that journey is a constant, ongoing, nirantara yatra. We are in that, and the mother's work, Sri Aurobindo's work, are in the line of that same aspiration, the same quest. I would say Sri Aurobindo and mother have fulfilled several indications, several hints that are given in the Veda. And he talks about it. Sri Aurobindo himself, when the mother sent him in a letter, she described her experience. He says this is a Vedic realization. When she has almost the whole universe, the whole Vishwa experiences the divine through her, as her. And she talks about it. It's in the prayers and meditation. Very powerful experience. I've tried to describe it in the Veda Made Simple, my book, which very few people have read. Only one I think who's read is you and I. But there's no competition. Sri Aurobindo was always, when a disciple was trying to disparage other traditions, Sri Aurobindo himself said, have all my disciples become Jivan Mukta? That they can disparage these great figures like Yajnavalkya and all these great figures from the past? Have you reached that height? No. If you haven't, you have no right to disparage the past. Sri Aurobindo himself, being a vast, very humble, very gentle. That's at least how I know him. Someone who assimilated others, even from the West, even from people like Nietzsche, even from people like Heraclitus, from Plato. He would always look for the essence. That is his genius. He picks the essence, he brings it. Almost like Sri Krishna, all come back again with philosophy. So yes, they have made great achievements. The mother's realization of the cellular consciousness, of how the cell itself is autonomous, and she goes down into the darkness, into the inconscient, and realizes, sees there the being who is asleep, and the being opens his eyes. And then she describes this experience when there's a vast spring of light, of joy, of bliss, and she describes it beautifully. So, aren't these part of the Vedic vision? Indra, who finds through the mantra, he breaks through the inconscient and brings out the go, the rays of light. At least I see it as not a negation, but a continuity of that Vedic vision. And to make people understand in India what India is about, what will unify them, what will bring them together. The Veda, that is the bedrock. We started there. Now you may say Sri Aurobindo has transcended it. Okay, even if he has transcended it, what has he transcended? He has transcended the Veda, if you want to say that. So, knowing Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they always took the past, they integrated, they assimilated, and they brought the truth or the essence of everything into their own yoga, and that's why it was Purna Yoga. So that is my humble submission. There's no disagreement with the sadhak that Sri Aurobindo and Mother's achievements are amazing, and I know because I follow, I study, I try to live it in my limited extent. So this is not a contradiction either or. This is a coming together of an idea that can unite India. Tomorrow you can say Sri Aurobindo has transcended Bande Matram. Why are we singing Bande Matram? He has transcended Ayodhya. Okay, why are we doing the Ayodhya temple? He has transcended India. Okay, then why are we loving India? Of course, they have transcended everything. But that transcendence also is rooted. It's very personal. It is connected to the past. It does not deny or negate the past. So it's just my approach. My approach is to take everything, take the best in the light of Sri Aurobindo and let it come out and follow his light. That's all I can say.
I mean, I think that, as I said, first of all, how do you understand the Veda? What do you mean by the Veda? Secondly, what do you mean by the agenda? You see? And if you define both these in a very narrow manner, then you have these problems, it seems to me. And when we say something has exceeded something else, this is a mental construct, in my view, because at that level, once you go to the levels beyond the mind, then these mental constructs themselves drop off. We see that in Sri Aurobindo's poetry as well. So, how can you have it both ways? How can you be fixated on mental constructs on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're claiming that one is higher than the other? This whole hierarchization, in fact, and comparison in this fashion is itself what drops off when we understand, how the levels of consciousness, not the mind, the levels of consciousness that go, as it were, beyond the mind, of which we have the proof in various ways in the Veda, because it is not a mental language at all. We have seen it is a symbolic, multi layered language. So, unless you want to make a very reductive reading of the realization of the Rishi in the Veda and assign it a, valency, which is from your own mental level, and then you read the agenda and then you assign a different valency to that, again from a mental point of view, so to speak, and then you hierarchize these and you say one has gone beyond the other. See, what I understand of both the Veda and Sri Aurobindo is that nothing ceases to be Brahman, nothing ceases to be divine, and nothing exceeds the divine. So, When you say that a light bulb is greater than a candle, it is both a fallacy from a certain point of view and, a reality from another point of view. You see, the fact is that both are forms of light, just as a bangle is a form of gold, and so is a bracelet. Now, if you say a bracelet has exceeded the bangle, well, wonderful, but it means you're still stuck in the realm of forms. I don't know if making sense. I don't know if you want to
It's
weigh
a
in on this.
Vedantic, you're giving a very Vedantic statement. That's true. I have no disagreement with that. But remember, Sri Aurobindo himself points out that the Rit Chit, the truth consciousness, the supermind, is mentioned, is hinted at in the Veda. In fact, the Vedas, it confirmed his experiences. If it were not so, if he were not bringing the wisdom of the past, if you read the Life Divine, he opens each chapter with a quotation from either the Veda or the Upanishads or the Gita. Very
In
simple.
fact,
He does that.
Life Divine is a commentary on the Ishavasya Upanishad.
And this is 1942. This is not the early Sri Aurobindo. If you want to say there was an early Sri Aurobindo.
No. See, again, I think what I was trying to hint at is we are making a category error, that we are trying to encapsulate and historicize, and place in a hierarchy, in a chronological hierarchy, which is the Western way, the historical, critical, chronological way. But consciousness cannot be, that is our whole point. The consciousness cannot be contained in that container. You see, that is what Sri Aurobindo is also saying,
And
that the Vedic Rik, though it may have been revealed at a particular time and space, so to speak, it is beyond that particular time and space. Otherwise,
if it is the Veda, and himself he said, I read somewhere that he told Subramaniam Swami, Subramaniam Bharati, that the Veda was revealed to him by Sri Krishna.
there you go. It's not in time. It's not in this time at all.
So if Sri Krishna taught him the Veda, and then someone else was critiquing Sri Krishna because Sri Krishna doesn't talk about the supermind. He says, so how do you expect me to criticize Sri Krishna? Sri Krishna is the master of my yoga. Narayana himself, I experienced Narayana. With whom I have realized identity. So it is not, he refused to criticize Sri Krishna, even though he shows that Sri Krishna, the Gita, the message was very precise. This is the war. You have to do what is needed. You have to follow dharma during the war. And how can you do karma yoga? That's it. That's what Sri Krishna is here to do in his yoga, in his time. That's the Sri Krishna in time and space. But then there is a Sri Krishna who is beyond time and space. There is a Sri Krishna of the gopis. There is the Sri Krishna who is Narayana himself. So if he is Narayana himself, then we cannot transcend Sri Krishna. Anything you do is Sri Krishna.
So that's the same thing I feel, because we misunderstand the idea of evolution. See, there is an evolution in time, and there's an evolution in which time as we understand it ceases to be. Right? In the realm of the Swara, where is time as we understand it? Our time is a mental construct where we say the past, the present, and the future are mental constructs. There's only a continuous stream, as it were, from the point of view of consciousness. Anyhow, we don't want to get sidetracked. We respect all opinions and we welcome comments as well. But I don't think, to sum up, it's a very productive approach to think that something has exceeded something else unless we have realized what that first something was and that next something which exceeded that first something is.
So it's a Yuga Dharma, no? It's a Yuga Dharma. They should not have exceeded it in the Vedic age. The world wasn't ready. Sri Krishna should not have exceeded. He shouldn't have, because then he would have turned the whole Kala, would have been turned upside down. Kala is an unfolding, is a becoming of being. If it's an unfolding of that which already is, then it has to follow a certain sequence of succession. and that is a continuity. At least that's how I see
No,
it.
but then they will argue, then why do you go back to the Veda? That is over. That belonged to that period.
But
Now
Sri
we are in
Aurobindo went back to the Veda.
no,
Sri
no, I'm
Aurobindo
saying,
went back to the Veda. Here.
there you go. See, this is the point that Aurobindo, see, Sri Aurobindo went back to the Veda, but Aurobindonians are saying abandon the Veda and only read Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. This is
And
the
that's okay.
point.
See, remember, what did Sri Aurobindo want for India? He did not want great realizations. I mean, that's what he said. He wanted brain power. We have to have the viveka, the ability to see Sri Aurobindo as part of a great revelation that is continuing. And he himself never looked down on any other tradition. He brought them all up. And Veda, Upanishads. In fact, he said there are only two books I learned from, Upanishads and the Gita. When people asked him, where did you know all this? It's from Upanishads and the Gita. So what are we going to say now? Oh, he transcended the Upanishads and the Gita, but he himself is quoting it. He himself is using it as part to show people. And how do you connect with people? If we tell people today, if I write a news article today on Sri Aurobindo's realization, most people will have no clue. I myself did not understand Sri Aurobindo until I went deeper into the Veda. I mean, that's the reality. But having said that, I would not have understood the Veda had Sri Aurobindo not prepared me for it.
Exactly.
So,
In fact, this is a wonderful note on which to conclude this episode because, please, viewers, let's not turn our backs to the very key to the Vedas that Sri Aurobindo gave us in the secret of the Veda. Otherwise, we will be committing, in my view, a certain kind of self goal. That is, as follows. Sri Aurobindo gave us secret of the Veda, and then we say, okay, Sri Aurobindo gave us the secret of the Veda, so now we don't have to read the Vedas, we'll only read Sri Aurobindo.
But we don't even read him. So we have gone beyond Sri Aurobindo. So I'm sorry, but let's be humble. Let's honor all our traditions. Every tradition had a value, has a value, and has its place. There are people who love Advaita Vedanta. What are you going to tell them? It doesn't exist. There are people who love Vishisht Advaita. There are people who are Dvaitvadis. What did Swami Vivekananda say about this? He said they're all realizations at a certain level of consciousness. He did not say, okay, he's wrong, like people do nowadays. There are some people from some organizations who say, oh, Sri Ramakrishna did not know. He was, and then other people will say, Sri Aurobindo was not enlightened because he had no guru. Really? I mean, people say these things. These are supposed to be responsible people who are leading great organizations. And you say, you just close your mouth and you say, okay, we will come to that. When we come to that, we will have to have a discussion. There are other modern enlightened people who have commented about Sri Aurobindo. I think we should talk about it. And we should dispel the misinformation they had and they spread about him. So I think that's more important, to understand Sri Aurobindo deeply, to dive into him. And Veda helped me. So, and I guarantee you, there are hundreds and thousands of people who come to Sri Aurobindo through the Veda. And I guarantee you there are hundreds and thousands of people who go to the Veda through Sri Aurobindo.
Exactly. And we are speaking from our own experience, viewers. And I think that even to understand India's mission in the world, it's not enough to say Vishwaguru Banenge unless you have an understanding of what the Vedas revealed or brought to the world, brought to humanity. It's also very difficult to understand the so-called mission of India. Anyhow, with those words, I think we once again celebrate.
And let me say one more thing.
Of course.
You still need the scholar. Why do you criticize the modern translators of the Veda? Because they do not engage with Sri Aurobindo. Well, they have transcended Sri Aurobindo. That is not scholarly. That is not having a comprehensive review of all the literature and to study it and give everything its place, to engage with it. Maybe you disagree with it, to engage with it. So our job is to bring all the traditions, Sri Aurobindo and other traditions, our whole approach, Sri Aurobindo and philosophy, looking at all the philosophers and comparing them, Sri Aurobindo and Shakespeare, Sri Aurobindo and Milton. You said he has transcended, so then there's no discussion possible. Then you just sit down and do meditation. But in the world that we are in, if we are doing a scholarly approach, an academic approach, which is tremendously needed on Sri Aurobindo, then you have to reference him, to study him in reference with other great traditions and contextualize them with Sri Aurobindo's light and contextualize Sri Aurobindo in their light. And that is how you do research and do scholarly presentations.
Well, you've just laid out the mission statement of the Sri Aurobindo chair. I couldn't have put it better myself. And this is what our own humble endeavor is and our own offering to the masters. And in that spirit, let's close today's episode of Amazing Vedas with Dr. Pariksith Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh, once again for joining us. Thank you, viewers. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And please enjoy yourselves as you understand and enjoy the Vedas. With those words, thank you. Namaste.